So your risk reward ratio is off, probably. And what do I mean by that? Well, think about in your life, right? There are things that you want to do, but you're scared. But what is the downside of that? So for instance, if you're interested in somebody romantically and you want to go talk to them, but out of fear you don't. But that's irrational because the reward for doing that, you can find a romantic partner, make a friend, etc. What's the downside? There's nothing really that will happen. But yet many times people don't do that. Or whether that's a business idea, right? You want to start a business, you've been dreaming of this your whole life and out of fear. But what is the downside of the fear? Okay, maybe you lose a little bit of money. You could always go back to square one and go back to where you originally were. Back in the day, when someone wanted to do something big, sometimes they had to go to war. They risked death. They wanted to go sail to new shores, whether it was the Vikings, explorers, etc. There was real downside risk. They could get lost, get caught up in sea. But here, now, most of that downside is gone. It's basically, you only have the upside. So we behave irrationally in that sense. And for somebody that does risk reward as far from investing for a living, it always sticks out to you because it's why not? Like from a risk reward profile, you're interested in somebody, they may be good for your business, right? And you're scared to go talk to them. What's the worst thing? The worst thing is going to say no. So there's not much downside. And the upside, there's almost unlimited possibility. And let's stay in specifically about work, right? Because what you do in your good waking hours, that's a significant majority of your life. So if you don't like that, if you don't like what you do, it's hard to have a great life because that takes off most of your waking hours and you're not connected to your work. So you're operating on an autopilot where you're not fully connected. So when you do that evaluation to think whether or not I should go for what I'm passionate for, what I've been thinking about, you have to factor that in as well. Not just a possible payout, not just what people are going to say, but with you inside, whether or not you're completely connected to what you're doing or you're not. Let's think of the following analogy, right? You get stuck on a desert island. The first scenario A, you're stuck with a bunch of people you don't like, right? The whole time you're going to be looking at your clock, you're going to wish you're getting out of there. You're not going to enjoy it. Scenario B, you're stuck with your best friend. Although the circumstances might not be the best, but you're connected to your best friend. You have so much commonality. So that time will be very different, even though it's the same time. So that's similar to maybe a business venture. And then definitely speaking with, let's say, a romantic partner or a friend, right? These are things that you spend significant amount of time in. So going for something that you feel fully connected in, you got to bake in all the scenarios with it. Not just externally what people will say, but what you feel deeply connected to. And this goes into a caveat as far as when I was speaking to somebody, a friend of mine, and they're like, "How is life?" And I said, "Oh, it's amazing." And they're looking at me like there's something wrong. Like you have to be in that autopilot that's going, some sort of monotone answer. But I push back against that wholeheartedly. Very likely your grandparents or whatever it is, a lot of people immigrated to the United States, right? They didn't come, they're not 6, 7 generations. They gave up so much to get there, right? And so for you to come and live a life where you're relatively comfortable relative to whether it's people outside of the country or relative to your grandparents, to live a life that's in completely autopilot, that's a failure. You gotta, what do I need to change up to say amazing? A lot of it could be internal work, but if it's something deep down that you want to do, you got to do it because a monotone life that's not, and you're living in the United States, you're relatively healthy. Most people that are watching is probably relatively healthy, probably on the younger side, living in the United States. There's no excuse. Obviously, there's setbacks, but there's no excuse to be in an amazing state most of the time. And if you're not, then question what lifestyle things do I need to change to be like that? So amazing should be status quo. Obviously, there are times where you're not feeling good or you have a tragedy, but Amazing should be the status quo, not a monotone, barely heard answer when you ask somebody how they're doing. Now, once you go for what you want, right? Let's say it's a business thing, right? You always wanted to do music. You always wanted to start that financial business. You always wanted to start the law firm. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's within you that you have to figure out what you want to do. There will be people that will try to take you off that path. Now, sometimes it's for good reason. Maybe they think you're being irrational. But a lot of times it's their own limitations, right? Or they secretly deep down want to do that, but they don't have the courage to do it. Now, they feel validated if everybody goes down that path. So if you don't go down that path, it's a threat to them. So I think it was the other week, I was in Temple, and I was telling somebody what I was doing. I started my own financial advising company, managing people's money, etc. And he immediately got defensive. He's in the industry, but he's working for somebody. He immediately got defensive, trying to tell me how smart he is. And so what does that really mean, right? What's really going on there? What really going on there is that maybe deep down he also wanted to do that. He doesn't feel comfortable with his current circumstances. So he constantly has to prove himself, justify it, because on its own, by itself, with himself, he doesn't feel comfortable. I'll give you another example. So I remember, when I was in college, I didn't necessarily have the same social pattern recognition, a little younger. And I was telling people about my health journey, what I was doing. And there were a few people that they were like, oh, it makes no sense. Nobody does that. And they were getting like animated about it, upset. And I was like confused, like, why are they getting upset? And then a couple of weeks later, they either reached out to me for tips on what to do, or by themselves, maybe they reached out to someone, they started doing that. Now, why did that happen? Well, that happened because why were they bothered? Why did it cause them to feel the necessity to get upset about it? Because they don't have a peace within themselves about it. They know that the choices that they make, they don't like. And when they see it, they know it's a proper choice, but they may not know how to articulate it and say, hey, show me what to do. So they immediately attack it. Because think about something that you're completely neutral about, right? If somebody tells me, hey, I love art and I'm going to do it, I'm completely neutral about it. I'm like, hey, good, go for you. Do what you want. But there was a time back in the day when I wanted to do content, and someone would say content, it didn't really cause an abrupt outroar, but a little bit, like I felt a little uneasiness inside. And I challenged myself, why do I feel uneasy? And the answer is because I wanted to do something like that. So a lot of times, especially if someone didn't do the work and they don't have the confidence, they'll try to take you off that path because they only feel good about their path if everyone else is doing it, because they can't rationally explain it to themselves. But at least if they have the majority of people doing it, they'll feel good. So be very cognizant of that. And also understand that if you're trailblazing your own path, right, there's going to be uncertainty because it's unique. And the reason why people don't go and, let's say it is, start their own business, reach out to people, start doing content, whatever it is, they don't not do it because of all the good things that are going to happen. Oh, I may post content, everyone's going to give me positive comments. I may start a business and I may make a bunch of money, or everyone's going to love me. They fear what? They fear the downside. The downside paralyzes them. Yeah, maybe if I post content, all of a sudden people are going to say bad things about me, or I'm going to get, no one's going to watch. Or I'm going to start a business and I'm going to be a failure and everyone's going to watch me fail. Or I'm going to go ask somebody, I don't know, whether it's a romantic interest, whether it's a sales. What's the fear? The fear is the downside. Now, your ability to go forward is what? It's not that you could accept the upside, because everyone would take the upside. It's your ability to accept the downside and still go with uncertainty. It's funny because with investing, right, a lot of times, or some assets, right, there is a possible of high payout, but you have to stomach the uncertainty. And when people want the complete certainty behind the investment, a lot of times the exponential gain is gone because the rewards for the path is being able to stomach the volatility, the uncertainty. And this goes right into my next point. All these things, when you think about what you want to do, the most important story is a story you tell yourself. Remember that you are in a relationship with yourself 100% of the time. There's nobody else that's like that, right? When you go to sleep, when you go into the shower, when you drive home, it's your thoughts. That's what occupies your mind, right? It's your own thoughts. So your internal dialogue is so important. Let's think about it this way. Two people can walk the same bridge, right? And they can have a completely different experience. Person A, right? They could be, oh, life is terrible. This person screwed me over. They maybe just got off a bad phone call. So their time at walking the bridge is terrible because their inner dialogue is, I'm so stupid, or they're so stupid. And that's the consistent dialogue that's going on with them. Now, another person, they just heard great news, or they're loving life. They're appreciating the architecture. So they both did the same thing, right? The action is the same. They walk down the bridge, but their experience is completely different. And so your internal dialogue is so important. And that goes to doing what you're passionate about. At the end of the day, you can't lie to yourself. So if you hate what you're doing, you could get the external validation, but deep inside, you will feel unrest and you will constantly seek the external validation, which will never be filled because it can't win over what's inside of you. That's your inner dialogue. How you look at yourself in the mirror will always win. And when you're okay with that, the less you need the validation because the relationship with yourself is on par. And everyone's path is unique, right? So everyone has a unique DNA and everyone has a unique life journey, right? They grew up in different backgrounds. They have different skill sets. So for you to blindly follow somebody, you're limiting your potential because they have a different skill set. They have a different life path. They have a different DNA. So maybe you could come understand different aspects of life from them, right? How do I solve this specific problem with coding? Or how do I pitch this? But for your entire, the ship of your life, where it's going, that's on you because you're the only one that knows exactly who you are. You have all the data points. No one has your full data points as far as how you feel every day, what you did every day, your life experiences. So the ship has to be driven by you. And then you could get little nuggets of advice from everybody else. And that goes into understanding what the most important things are. So I was speaking with somebody the other day, a friend of mine, and they were telling me the most important thing for them is finding a wife, right? So I said, okay. And based on that specific person's profile, I said, okay, you probably want to go to New York. You'd probably 10x your probabilities of finding somebody. But they're like, oh, it's cold there, the weather. So I said, let's understand, what are the most important things there? You said the most important thing is finding someone. Is it the weather or is it finding somebody? Because if it's finding someone, you have your answer. Yes, everything has trade-offs, but you got to focus on your priorities. What are your biggest priorities? And obviously where you work and what you do, that's going to occupy a significant portion of your life. Who you marry, that's going to have a significant portion of your life. So don't get distracted. People may, oh, do you have this car? Did you go on this trip? Do you have this many friends? Whatever it is. But understand what are the most important things. What is the highest leverage? And focus on those things one by one. Whatever you put the most importance, whether it's health, whether it's friendship, whether it's religion, whatever it is for you. But don't get distracted from that. And like, for instance, when I'm doing, let's say, portfolio management, right? The biggest position is obviously going to have the biggest impact on the portfolio, right? So the same thing in your life. If the biggest thing for you is where you work, because that's taking up most of your time, focus on that versus what coffee are you drinking today. So understand that. And then don't get caught in the constant comparison. So when you constantly compare yourself to other people, it's going to be the thief of joy because there's always going to be something that they have that you don't have, right? So I was talking to my friend and he was very upset. Upset is a strong word, but he was disappointed that he's not married and his friends are married and how could it be at this age? I said, don't compare yourself. You're on your own journey. First off, they could be kind of married and their spouse is not a great spouse for them and they haven't hit their potential. But even if they did, you have other skill sets. You have other things that they don't have. Maybe it's your charisma. Maybe whatever it is. Maybe it's your intelligence. Maybe it's your beauty. So don't constantly compare. Learn to appreciate your unique things and your unique talents that you could bring into the world. When you constantly compare yourself, it's the analogy of I'm running a sprint, right? And I'm constantly looking to the side to see where everyone's going. I'm not going to have a very effective sprint if I'm constantly turning around. Where are they? Where is he? Where is she? Right? Obviously, there's always going to be, let's say you're at a job and you have to compare PowerPoints or whatever you're doing. But in general in life, the comparison is a fool's game, right? Let's say you have a friend and they pass away at 40. And then what? So he passed away at 40. You don't know when your life's going to end. Everyone has a unique journey. Don't compare yourself to other people, because if you're constantly comparing, you're constantly trying to fit in, again, you're not running the most effective sprint. You're not maximizing your potential. And that leads into my next point, right? So when you're going for the things that you want, right? Always strive for growth, right? You see certain individuals where at a certain age, they fear, what's the quote? Most people die at age 25 and are only buried at 75. Now, what does this mean? There's a lot of different ways to interpret it, but some of it is at a certain age, you stop exploring, you lose that curiosity, you lose that thirst for life. You're playing life on defense. Let me pay the bills. Let me not break too many things. Let me stay in my bubble. But so you're not expanding, and a human being is constantly meant to expand. And as a result of that, your energy, your tonality, you're not connected. You're just on autopilot. So it doesn't have to be with everything, but if you're not constantly growing and you're not constantly pushing the envelope, you lose a little bit of that life. And that's why you see some of the times where the people are the most potent, when you see from their energy, it's when they're on the come up and they're constantly pushing. And then sometimes once they're ready, they feel satisfied, they go away and they sit on a couch all day. What happens? They lose a little bit of that life. They lose a little bit of that zest. So it doesn't have to be every aspect of life, but constantly pushing is very important. And once you find your unique thing, which it could take years, right? Think about it. You go to college, you could try 2, 3, 4 jobs, but you still may think, okay, I don't know what I want. Even if you find it at age 35, right? The next 30 years of your life, when you're fully connected with what you do, the time will feel so different. So don't feel like, oh, okay, I have the opportunity cost. I spent 10 years in here. It doesn't matter. You live once. You want to feel connected with what you do. I remember when I was in law school, right? And I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to the best law school in Florida. My plan was like, I'm going to practice law. And after my first year, I realized that although I'm learning great things and very good skills, I don't feel connected to the work. It didn't light me up. But it was hard. It's like the opportunity cost comes in. Wow, the sunk cost bias as far as, wow, I spent all this time and now I'm not going to do it. And that's another year goes by, right? But when you think of the grand scheme of life, you're 23, you're 24, right? You have all these years probability-wise. Obviously, you never know when your time is up. But probability-wise, you have so much time. So 1, 2, 3, 4 years, when you find something that you're fully connected to, it's completely worth it. And eventually, after my first year, I realized I want to continue doing the law degree, but I'm not going to practice. And I did a master's in finance simultaneously. And the day I finally decided to let go, it felt like I left the prison. Why? Because I built up a reputation as a lawyer, as somebody that's going to be a lawyer. And I spent this time and it weighed on me, but I knew deep down the decision that I needed to make. And when I did it, I felt very free. And I'm so happy that I did it, because when you find something that you're fully connected to, you're just on a different vibration. And that goes to finding someone as well. That goes to friends as well. And that will lead to a high vibration lifestyle. And also, if you decide to go for what you want, right? Even if you fail, you'll have peace, because you'll never ask yourself, what if? What if I tried this, right? I meet some people. I just had a conversation with a friend, and he's working his corporate job, and he's comfortable, but he's like, I kind of want to know if I push myself and I go and I do my thing. And it could eat away at you, right? As you get older and you never explore it. Because even if you explore that path and you fail, there's a certain piece. It's like, I went for what I want and it didn't work out. So just know that, like when you try, or let's say you're interested in somebody and you're like, you know what, let me just go say hello to him and see what happens, right? Even, and you could probably have this experience, or whether it's a sales, like when you're done, even if the person said no, they completely shut it out, you feel very good because you did your part, right? You versus you don't say anything or you don't explore that path and it starts eating away at you that you didn't do it. I remember I interviewed for this job. It was a billionaire, big like accounting finance role. And after the interview, I remember I'm a pretty decisive person. And I remember it looked like I was gonna get a job offer. So I was speaking to my dad, what do you think? And I realized to myself that the fact that I need to go reach out to him, what does that tell me? That tells me that I'm not that I know deep down that I don't want to do that role, but the opportunity cost of having that big job is so strong that I felt paralyzed. I need to justify it. I need to reach out to somebody to tell me whether or not I should take this job, right? Because deep down, it didn't align with what I really wanted. And that leads to my final conclusion, right? And that's when you go for what you want and you're fully connected with what you do, there's a certain piece, right? You don't feel the necessity to constantly be validated. You don't feel the necessity to leave your life and get, whether that's you have to get blackout every weekend drunk or do things to numb yourself, right? Because you're fully connected with who you are. I remember my last job, which I ended up kind of not enjoying at the end and wanted to leave because I knew what I wanted to do. And I remember on a Wednesday, like I didn't really enjoy going to the office. And I remember I was like, okay, I just want to go to a bar and drink. And I never get that feeling. I was like, why do I want to do that? And then I realized I'm like, okay, because I really don't like the reality that I'm in. I don't think I should be going there. I told myself, there's got to be a way out of here. There's no way in the United States you live one life that you constantly, for the next 30 years of your life, need to go to this monotonous job that you feel robotic about. And I'm like, there has to be a way. And then I journaled it, and the conclusion was obvious that I should start my financial advising firm. But I remember that very powerfully. And so, again, when you finally find that, you'll have that peace and you'll know it, you'll feel it. And I hope you all get to there. Thank you, everyone.